To learn means to be in a state of play, to live a life of curiosity, a life of inspiring one another, a life of connecting with each other, and a life of real conversations. Welcome to Natural Learning. The drive to play is found in most mammals and some species of birds actually as well. As humans though, we too have a drive to play. In fact, play possibly has a greater significance in our lives than in any other creature. But what really is play? And why, particular to this episode, do children love chasing games so much? Young mammals come into the world with many different instincts, but often these behaviour drives are not sufficient at birth, and they must be practiced and refined before they are particularly useful to us. I'm going to bring up the naturalist Carl Gross again, and he makes an interesting comment about the importance of play in the life of a young animal. And so he writes this: animals cannot be said to play because they are young and frolicsome, but rather they have a period of youth in order to play. For only by doing so can they supplement the insufficient hereditary endowment with individual experience in view of the coming tasks of life. As I've stated in previous episodes, when we play games, we're engaging in a simulation that helps us learn necessary skills. Different animals play in different ways, depending on what skills they need for survival and reproduction. Lion cubs and other young predators play at stalking and chasing, whereas zebra colts and young gazelles and other animals that are preyed upon play at fleeing and dodging. Among species in which males fight each other over access to females, young males engage in a lot of play fighting, and among at least some primates, young females engage in playful care of infants. And this holds true for humans as well. So children around the world and throughout history play at the skills they see themselves needing as they look at the adult world around them. For example, children spend a lot of time practicing discussion and negotiation in a play setting. Watch any group of children deciding on the rules of a game and you will see that they nearly spend more time discussing the rules than they do actually playing the game. So children play at whatever they see around them, and this includes language play, physical play, construction play, and a variety of social play. They may well conduct more sobering types of play when living through extreme circumstances as well. For example, when children were faced with the horrors of World War II, they played games that confronted and not avoided these horrors. So they played games that had names such as blowing up bunkers and seizing the clothes of the dead, and a game called tickling the corpse. They sound pretty gruesome, right? And one game that children in a concentration camp played was called Klepsy, a common term for stealing. And Peter Gray again explains this game. So the game involved one playmate being blindfolded, and then one of the others would step forward and hit him hard in the face. And then, with the blindfold removed, the one who'd been hit had to guess who had hit him, based on people's expressions or maybe some other giveaway evidence. So to survive at Auschwitz, one had to be an expert at bluffing, for example about stealing bread or about the details of someone's escape or some sort of resistance plans. And therefore Klepsy may have been practice for that skill. Children play at those skills which are most valuable to them at that particular moment in time, and they also play in response to those things that give them the most stress and fear. So games of chase and evasion, including the classic game of tag, become really valuable in this regard. And that's because they revolve around being in a state of vulnerability and coping with emergencies. So children seem to love being pursued in chase games, and I want to look at why that is. The reality is that children are quite powerless when it comes to confronting people or other problems head on. And so being able to evade is actually a really powerful strategy. Also, children's deepest fear seems to be isolation. So playing with that fear by deliberately putting themselves into a mild state of isolation and fear, and then followed by a reconnection with a loving adult, is one way that children learn to cope with that fear. So this is what underlies games such as peekaboo, or throwing your child up in the air and then catching them again, as well as hide and go seek. So whatever the reason may be as to why we particularly prefer being pursued, this preference comes up again and again as the most pleasurable position to be in many of the games that we humans play. So even within formal sports such as soccer, rugby or hockey or any of those kind of sports, it can be basically understood as a more complex version of tag. So the fun in the sport comes from evading a horde of enemies as you try to reach your goal. The main reason why the other team defends is so that they then get the opportunity to be the one that does the evading. One of the difficulties when children play chase games together though is that no one wants to be in. So when an adult joins in the game, children are usually quick to volunteer the adult to be the chaser. And I've played a lot of chase games in my time as a teacher and as a camp leader and as an uncle, and being the chaser in chase games has kind of been the default position. But I just encourage you to really embrace that. So start chasing your kids, they'll love it. But just a note on that as well, play the chase games on the edges of their limits. Don't be too soft or it gets boring, but don't be too hard either. Otherwise they give up or they feel powerless or scared. You want them to feel that they can escape you just that little bit more than they could yesterday. So I'm going to share a few favourite chase games in the rest of this video, but to be honest, you don't have to make it complicated. Just start chasing. Have fun. Alright, so other than the basic game tag, there's a few other games that you can try as well. There's of course the games of hide and go seek and variations of that sort. So people go out and hide and then one person goes and looks for those people. A variation on that is to play the game Sardines, where one person goes out and hides and everybody looks for that person. And when they find that person, they hide with them. Okay, so eventually the numbers whittle down until there's basically one person looking for the whole group. And the aim is to try and squeeze yourself into one space, all the people to squeeze themselves into one space as easily as possible. So that's the game of Sardines. Also another tag game is a go home, stay home. So this is where people go out and hide and then they have to get back to base, and they try to do that in a sneaky way as possible, and the tagger is out there trying to tag them before they get back home to base. And obviously you need to, as a tagger, you can't just sit around the base the whole time. You actually want to go out and look for people again, and if you are the person hiding, just take your time and wait, and show children how to do this, to just take their time and wait for the tagger to move away from the home base before they start running towards it. So those are some excellent games. Another fun game that you can play with that requires though quite a number of people, maybe you want at least sort of 9 people, is to split up into 3. So you have three groups, and each of them starts, you need also 3 colors of face paint, and so each team starts with some face paint on their cheek of a different color. And so say we've got blue, red and green. So what would happen, the blue team, they would try to chase the red team, and the red team would try to chase the green team, and the green team would try to chase the blue team. And so when they catch a person of that other color, that person goes back to, so say for instance a blue tags a red team person, the red team person needs to go to the blue base, and then they need to get a bit of blue face paint on their face. So now they also become a blue player. and so the game continues until eventually one of the teams has no more players left, and then the game kind of stops. And what you want to try and do is try and be the player who has the least amount of face paint, which kind of means you've evaded the most people for the most time. So yeah, this is quite a fun game. The game is colours, so I hope you enjoy that, and that requires a bit of a bigger group of people, but maybe you have quite a few people around at your place or within your bubble. Alright, so cheers, thanks so much, get out there and start chasing. And just to finish up, again, I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a like or a share as well. That would be fantastic. And if you'd like to talk with me more about natural learning and how that can work in your family, then either message me on Facebook or see my website, frankeducation.nz. Alright, thanks so much. Bye.